Top 10 horror movies that are inspired by or similar to creepypastas. 10. Cujo. In this tale of a killer canine, a man's best friend turns into his worst enemy. When sweet Saint Bernard Cujo is bitten by a bat, he starts behaving oddly and becomes very aggressive. As Cujo morphs into a dangerous beast, he goes on a rampage in a small town. Stay at home. Mom gets caught in Cujo's crosshairs on a fateful errand with her son, Tad. Stuck in their tiny car, Donna and Tad have a frightening showdown with the crazed animal. Although this movie is not based on a creepypasta, but there's a similar story, The Smile Dog. The Smile Dog is the titular main antagonist of the creepypasta story Smile.jpg. He is a supernatural entity that haunts the lives of any who see his face, driving them to insanity and suicide. The Smile Dog is a very aggressive, bloodthirsty, dangerous, and sadistic entity who endlessly revels in the terror others have of him. He is seemingly always smiling and only seems displeased if his request is not fulfilled by his victim. Smile Dog's only real goal seems to be to spread the fear of him as far and wide as he possibly can, killing those who defy and resist him, and taking great joy in doing so, as well as dragging them to hell, from where some believe he came. 9. Slender the Movie. Slender the Movie is a 6-minute short horror film made by Jonathan's Other Adventures. The story goes that Jonathan was going out for a nighttime walk in the woods near his house, but then noticed something very off. It was a page nailed to a tree. Jonathan begins to realize that something is stalking him. At the end, he comes face to face with a tall, pale, faceless man-like creature wearing a black suit and tie. This short film is based on the Slender Man creepypasta. Slender Man is a fictional supernatural character that originated as a creepypasta internet meme created by Something Awful forum user Eric Knudsen in 2009. He is depicted as a thin, unnaturally tall humanoid with a featureless head and face, wearing a black suit. 8. Carved. Kuchisake Anna, also known as the Slit-Mouthed Woman, is a 2007 Japanese horror film directed by Koji Shiraishi and written by Shiraishi and Naoki Yokota. Based on the Japanese urban legend known as Kuchisake Anna, or the Slit-Mouthed Woman, the film stars Eriko Sato as Kyoko Yamashita, a divorced mother and teacher who attempts to solve a series of child abduction cases with the help of her co-worker Noboru Matsuzaki, played by Haruhiko Kato. The film was followed by a prequel, Carved 2, The Scissors Massacre, in 2008. This movie is based on the Japanese creepypasta, Kuchisake Anna. As the story goes, according to legend, Kuchisake Anna was a woman who was mutilated during her life, with her mouth being slit from ear to ear. In some versions of the story, Kuchisake Anna was the adulterous wife or a mistress of a samurai during her life. She grew lonely as the samurai would always be away from home fighting. Because of this, she would begin to have affairs with men around the town. When the samurai heard of this, he was outraged. As punishment for her infidelity, her husband sliced the corners of her mouth from ear to ear. Other versions of the tale include that her mouth was mutilated during a medical or dental procedure, that she was mutilated by a woman who was jealous of her beauty, or that her mouth is filled with numerous sharp teeth. After her death, the woman returned as a vengeful spirit, or onryo. As an onryo, she covers her mouth with a cloth mask, often specified as a surgical mask, or in some iterations, a hand fan or handkerchief. She carries a sharp instrument with her, which has been described as a knife, a machete, a scythe, or a large pair of scissors. She is also described as having supernatural speed. She is said to ask potential victims if they think she is attractive, often phrased as watashi, kaire, which translates to "Am I pretty?" or "Am I beautiful?" If the person answers no, she will kill the person with her weapon, and if the person answers yes, she will reveal her mutilated mouth. She then repeats her question, or asks "Kore demo," which translates to "even with this," or "even now," and if the person responds with no or screams in fright, she will kill the person with her weapon. If the response is yes, she will slice the corners of the person's mouth from ear to ear, resembling her own disfigurement. An individual can survive an encounter with Kuchisei Kana by using one of several methods. In some versions of the legend, Kuchisei Kana will leave the potential victim alone if they answer yes to both of her questions, though in other versions, she will visit the individual's residence later that night and murder the person while sleeping. Other survival tactics include replying to Kuchisei Kana's question by describing her appearance as average, giving the individual enough time to run away, distracting her by giving or throwing money or hard candies, particularly the kind of candy known as Beko-ame, made of caramelized sugar, in her direction, as she will stop to pick them up, or by saying the word pomade 3 times. 7. The Midnight Man. When a girl and her friends summon a terrifying creature known as the Midnight Man, he uses their biggest fear against them. This film is based on a creepypasta of the same name. The Midnight Game is an old pagan ritual, used mainly as punishment for those who have broken the laws of the pagan religion in question. While it was mainly used as a scare tactic to not disobey the gods, there is still a very existent chance of death to those who play the Midnight Game. There is an even higher chance of permanent mental scarring. It is highly recommended that you do not play the Midnight Game. However, for those few thrill seekers searching for a rush, or for those delving into obscure occult rituals, these are simple instructions on how to play. Do so at your own risk. It must be exactly 12 a.m. when you begin performing the ritual. Otherwise, it will not work. You will need a candle, a piece of paper, a writing implement, matches or a lighter, salt, a wooden door, and at least 1 drop of your own blood. If you are playing with multiple people, they will need their own of the aforementioned materials and they will have to perform the steps below accordingly. Step 1. Write your full name, first, middle, and last, on the piece of paper. Put at least 1 drop of blood on the paper. Allow it to soak into the paper. Step 2. Turn off all of the lights in the place you are doing this. Go to your wooden door, and place the paper with your name on it in front of the door. Now, take out the candle and light it. Place it on top of the paper. Step 3. Knock on the door 22 times. The hour must be 12 a.m. upon the final knock. Then, open the door, blow out the candle, and close the door. You have just allowed the Midnight Man to enter your house. Step 4. Immediately relight your candle. This is where the game begins. You must now lurk around your now completely dark house, with the lit candle in your hand. Your goal is to avoid the Midnight Man at all costs, until 3:33 a.m. Should your candle ever go out, that means the Midnight Man is near you. You must relight your candle in the next 10 seconds. If you are not successful in doing this, you must then immediately surround yourself with a circle of salt. If you are unsuccessful in both of your actions, the Midnight Man will create a hallucination of your greatest fear, and rip out your organs one by one. You will feel it, but you will be unable to react. If you are successful in creating the circle of salt, you must remain in there until 3:33 a.m. 6. Annabelle. Annabelle is a 2014 American supernatural horror film directed by John R. Leonetti, written by Gary Dauberman and produced by Peter Safran and James Wan. It is a prequel to the 2013 film The Conjuring and the second installment in the Conjuring universe franchise. The film was inspired by a creepypasta story of a doll named Annabelle told by Ed and Lorraine Warren. The film stars Annabelle Wallis, Ward Horton, and Alfre Woodard. A spin-off focusing on the origins of the Annabelle doll that was introduced in The Conjuring was announced shortly after The Conjuring's release, mainly due to its worldwide box office success and the positive reception towards the depiction of the doll. Principal photography began in January 2014 in Los Angeles. Annabelle premiered at the TCL Chinese Theater in Los Angeles on September 29, 2014, and was theatrically released in the United States on October 3, 2014, by Warner Bros. Pictures and New Line Cinema. Annabelle received negative reviews from critics, many of whom felt the film inferior to its predecessor, praise for atmosphere, but it was a major box office success, grossing over $257 million against its $6.5 million production budget. A prequel, titled Annabelle: Creation, was released on August 11, 2017. A sequel, titled Annabelle Comes Home, was released on June 26, 2019. 5. It is a 2017 American supernatural horror film directed by Andy Muschietti and written by Chase Palmer, Cary Fukunaga, and Gary Dauberman. The film was produced by New Line Cinema, Cat Smith Productions, Lynn Pictures, and Vertigo Entertainment. It is the first of a two-part adaptation of the 1986 novel of the same name by Stephen King, primarily covering the first chronological half of the book. It is the first film in the It film series, as well as being the second adaptation following Tommy Lee Wallace's 1990 miniseries. The film stars Jaden Lieberher and Bill Skarsgård as the lead roles, with Jeremy Ray Taylor, Sophia Lillis, Finn Wolfhard, Wyatt Oleff, Chosen Jacobs, Jack Dylan Grazer, Nicholas Hamilton, and Jackson Robert Scott featured in supporting roles. Set in Derry, Maine, the film tells the story of the Losers Club, a group of 7 outcast children who are terrorized by the eponymous being which emerges from the sewer, only to face their own personal demons in the process. Development of the theatrical film adaptation of it began in March 2009 when Warner Brothers started discussing that they would be bringing it to the big screen, with David Kojanek planned to direct, before being replaced by Cary Fukunaga in June 2012. After being dropped out as the director in May 2015, Andy Muschietti was signed on to direct the film in June 2015. He talks of drawing inspiration from 1980s films such as The Howling, 1981, The Thing, 1982, The Goonies, 1985, Stand By Me, 1986, and Near Dark, 1987, and cited the influence of Steven Spielberg. During the development, the film was moved to New Line Cinema Division in May 2014. Principal photography began in Toronto on June 27, 2016, and ended on September 21, 2016. The locations for it were in the Greater Toronto Area, including Port Hope, Oshawa, and Riverdale. Benjamin Wallfish was hired in March 2017 to compose the film's musical score. It premiered in Los Angeles at the TCL Chinese Theater on September 5, 2017, and was released in the United States on September 8, 2017, in 2D and IMAX formats. A critical and commercial success, the film set numerous box office records and grossed over $701 million worldwide, becoming the third highest grossing R-rated film of all time, later settling at fifth after Joker and Deadpool 2 usurped the film. Unadjusted for inflation, it became the highest grossing horror film of all time. It received generally positive reviews, with critics praising the performances, direction, cinematography and musical score, and many calling it one of the best Stephen King adaptations. It also received numerous awards and nominations, earning 2 Washington, D.C. Area Film Critics Association nominations, including Best Acting Ensemble. It was nominated for the Critics' Choice Movie Award for Best Sci-Fi/Horror Movie. The film won 3 Bogey Awards, for pulling in more than 2 million German admissions in 11 days. In addition, the motion picture was named one of the best films of 2017 by various critics, appearing on several critics' end-of-year lists. The second film, It Chapter 2, was released on September 6, 2019, covering the remaining story from the book. Yet again, not based on a creepypasta, but similar to a creepypasta. Laughing Jack is the titular main antagonist of the creepypasta story of the same name. He is a sadistic killer clown who was originally an imaginary friend to a little boy. That is until the boy forgot about him. Follow his story through being made, forgotten, and becoming a sadistic killer clown, who now seeks to murder young children. 4. The Mothman Prophecies. The Mothman Prophecies is a 2002 American supernatural mystery film directed by Mark Pellington, and starring Richard Gere and Laura Linney. Based on the 1975 book of the same name by parapsychologist and Fortean author John Keel, the screenplay was written by Richard Hatem. The story follows John Klein, a reporter who researches the legend of the Mothman. Still shaken by the death of his wife 2 years earlier from glioblastoma, Klein is sent to cover a news piece and ends up inexplicably finding himself in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, where there have been sightings of an unusual creature and other unexplained phenomena. As he becomes increasingly drawn into mysterious forces at work, he hopes they can reconnect him to his wife, while the local sheriff becomes concerned about his obsessions. The film claims to be based on actual events that occurred between November 1966 and December 1967 in Point Pleasant, as described by Keel. It was shot in Pittsburgh and Kittanning, Pennsylvania, and was released to mixed reviews. To this very day, the Mothman now lives its life as a creepypasta. 3. The Sleep Experiment. The Sleep Experiment is a 2022 horror film made by John Farrelly. The film is based on the Russian sleep experiment creepypasta. The title of the story itself carries with it a sense of dread and horror. Shortly after World War II, 5 political prisoners are subjected to an experiment in which they have to remain awake for 30 days in a tank filled with an experimental gas. As with most science gone wrong stories, the test subjects begin to lose their minds among a number of other gruesome symptoms. The horror does not end when the experimenters try to save their subjects, far from it. Just know that this story may not be appropriate if you are squeamish or dislike gore, as the narrative goes into graphic detail about the physical state of the patients. Thankfully there are no pictures, or this would be the ultimate nightmare fuel. 2. The Backrooms found footage. A cameraman helping to shoot an indie film suddenly finds himself wandering a liminal space while being chased by a tall, dark stick monster. This film is based on a creepypasta with the same name. 1. The Curse of Robert the Doll. Emily, a student desperate for money, works the night shift as a cleaner at a local museum. However, her life turns upside down when she experiences unexplainable paranormal phenomena every night. This film is based on a creepypasta of the same name, but is inaccurate to the actual story of Robert the Doll. Not for the faint of heart, Robert the Doll really exists. The myths surrounding him vary, especially since he became so popular on the internet. The doll was given to artist Robert Eugene Otto in the late 1800s or early 1900s by his grandfather while he was on a trip to Germany. The doll, which he named after himself, then took on a life of its own and began to scare the family. Otto is said to have kept his doll into adulthood, and it subsequently led his late wife to insanity. The doll is currently residing in the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida. Visitors must ask Robert politely if they want to take his photo. If they mock him or take his photo without permission, Robert is said to lay a curse on them.